Chefs of the future, COF Nation, COF Nation. Chefs of the future, listen. My name is Rich, and if you click play, you are part of the nation, and I welcome you. Now, we have a lot to talk about, and I'm very serious about this topic. And if you haven't already, make sure you check out season number 1 of Chefs of the Future. COF Nation, thank you for supporting us. And it's only because y'all came in, y'all supported, y'all gave y'all feedback, y'all gave me what y'all wanted to hear, and I did so, that this is all possible, that I'm now coming to y'all with a visual aspect that y'all can see the show filming taking place and everybody that I have planned to pull up for y'all. Now listen. Now, as you can tell by the title of this video, we are talking about where do we sit in line for the vaccinations. Us as food service workers, hospitality workers, people that work in hotels, people that work in food and breakfasts, people that work in food carts, where should we be in line for vaccinations? And look, as I gave my opinion on this, months ago, when we first started talking about, in what round do we fit in with reopening? And now we're having the same conversations where do we sit with the vaccinations? And the more of us that get vaccinated, the more comfortable the employers, so many of us can feel more comfortable opening up their doors to the public, more so than they already allowed to, because of all the restrictions, dining restrictions, capacities, and everything that's going on. But look, I feel like y'all should know a little bit about me before, so y'all can get a stance of where I'm coming from, how I'm digesting this, because it's of no, light thing that I'm giving any kind of criticism, that I'm telling people, that I'm discouraging people to go out to eat. Now, myself, again, I'm from New York City. I've been in this food industry over 13 years. I've worked in everything from food, bed and breakfasts, to hotels, freestanding restaurants, corporate dining, dining halls, catering halls, catering companies. And so it's very much so in my DNA. I go to sleep thinking about it. I wake up thinking about it for the last 13 years, and I love what I do. When it comes to where do I feel personally food service workers should be in line for vaccinations. Now, this was going to be a completely different episode, completely different show. I had a completely different mindset when I was filming this originally, just because of the stories that was being said. Now, in order for you to get a full picture of what's going on when it comes to, the reopening of the restaurants and full service dining, particularly in New York City, and where the vaccination process is for the food service workers and the hospitality workers, you have to go back in time. Now, I want to take you back in time to a place where the governor, Andrew Cuomo, said, look, we're going to ban all indoor dining from New York City permanently, meaning that it's going to be non-existent. It's just not going to exist no more. Now, rightfully so, you had a huge backlash of people saying, look, there's the research on this is shaky at best, and the numbers don't justify such a drastic move. Maybe you could, cut it off for a time, but to ban it permanently, they felt was a drastic move, particularly for a city as large and as powerful as New York. So time moved past. Those critics continued to rally and push for the reopening of indoor dining in New York City, where you had the other group of people that were understood and that was more understanding, more understanding of the situation, and that just allowed the events to unfold, let the numbers guide the actions, the rates guide the actions of the reopening process. So now, but we felt like we had a break in the case where they said, look, come out last week, Andrew Cuomo said, in time for Valentine's Day, we're going to announce that we're reopening indoor dining. And that was huge and received an equally big amount, equally as large, amount of backlash because people saying, and this is the exact quote. So when he said this, it came with backlash of people saying, look, we've been in the camp saying you should keep workers out of work until they can get vaccinated. And this was a quote that he was quoted saying last week. We're saying, of course, I want restaurant workers to be eligible, he said during a press conference. I want to think everybody should be eligible. But the realistic situation is that we don't have enough supplies. He said and proposed a hypothetical question. Ask if anyone in the group receiving vaccinations should be removed from the list to make room for restaurant workers. Now, that's what he said last week. And he got the backlash for that. And so large, so monumental, that you fast forward to today, to this week, and they've gotten more federal supplies, shipped to the state of New York so that they could start vaccinating food service workers. Now, here's the direct article on that. Now, this is coming to us from Eater. And it says that Governor Cuomo announced today that New York City can allow restaurant workers to be included in the current vaccine eligible groups, namely Phase 1B. The federal government has released additional vaccines to New York, according to Cuomo, which allows the states to distribute 20% more vaccines to local governments. It goes on to say that the move allows taxi drivers, restaurant workers, and workers at facilities for the developmental disabled to soon receive vaccinations. Now, this is huge because what we're seeing is potentially a backtrack of something that he was clearly passionate about. He clearly felt that restaurant workers deserve to be at a certain plateau and should not budge and should sit there and be quiet until a number was called. And how many of us we exposed in the process, was just, that's what it is. It's casualties of war. And we're in the war for survival, against the pandemic. And I understand that. But again, as a food service worker, somebody who's been in this industry for years, I can tell you some of the best restaurants in the world, okay, particularly in New York City, are small in the back. It's the perfect situation to breed disease and to spread disease. Some of the world's best restaurants barely have enough counter space to lay a cutting board on top when it really gets bumping. And take that as a fact. And comment below and let me know your experiences with finding space in the kitchen that you've worked in. But listen, now my personal opinion on this, and again, this is just my personal opinion, was that dining is a luxury. It's something that you do when you're comfortable, when you're well off. Now, dining is huge for the psyche. Just us as social beings, as people that interact with one another, it's huge. But we have to take into account that it's not something that we need as a species to survive. When you're talking about people that drive buses, trains, they're an essential. They get people from one place to another. When you're talking about nurses, of course, they're essential workers. Grocery store baggers, they're essential workers. Restaurants, even though they was deemed an essential business, they're not treated They're not treated. They're not treated as essential workers. And they are, particularly if you deem in their business essential. But my personal opinion was, look, you don't have to put the restaurant workers in phase 1B. You don't. But I understand that this is a huge pressure that, you literally have people's lives crumbling before their eyes. And the people that called in and shared their stories on the show in the first season and continue to this day with me personally, I hear you and I feel it. And I'm going through it as well. I feel the pressure just being somebody that supports themselves in the hospitality industry. And that's how I make my bread and butter. That's how I pay my bills. I feel the pressure. And that unknown of what's to come is on my mind as well. But listen, this wasn't to bash Andrew Cuomo or to call out. It was to rejoice. It's to say, look, we're deemed an essential business and we're finally being treated like essential workers, even though this is something that should have been done from the beginning. But the question is now for y'all, how do y'all feel like this? Are you happy like myself? Or are you more apprehensive saying, look, the timing of this is weird. Why does it take, like a week later, now you found more vaccinations to give out to the food service workers, and you're already quoted saying how you really feel. Making, rhetorical questions talking about, what group of people should we take off the list for the restaurant workers? Well, then, listen, you dumb da-da-da-da. You shouldn't have deemed us essential workers and have us stay open if that was the case. But again, not complaining. Chefs of the future, let me know how y'all feel about that. I'm out of here.